My mentor's daughter called me some orphan with daddy issues while I talked about how much her father meant to me. When I tried to leave, her brother grabbed my arm and said, "You're not walking away from this." I yanked free. That was 2 months ago. This morning, they were standing outside my office, pale and shaking. My bio father vanished when I was 11. I wish I could say he died. At least then I'd have a grave to scream at. Instead, he left for cigarettes and never came back. Before that, his love came in the form of cracked knuckles and slurred apologies. I grew up believing that men who raised you also broke you. So when I turned 19 and landed a job at this logistics company just outside of Pittsburgh, I wasn't looking for anything but a paycheck. I started as an assistant, answering phones, running coffee, and swallowing my pride every time someone treated me like furniture. And then there was Dale, the CEO, gruff and gray-haired. He didn't smile much, but he saw me. The first time he stayed late, I was the only assistant still in the office. He asked me to proofread a proposal a member of his team had sent him. I stayed until midnight fixing the grammar and ended up rewriting most of it. The next day, he called me into his office and asked if I'd ever considered going into management. I told him I didn't think people like me made it that far. He just chuckled and said, "They will now." A year later, when I told him I never learned how to drive because my dad never taught me, he cleared his Saturday and took me to a parking lot. When I failed the test, he said, "Failure just means you're still learning." When I passed it, he handed me his old car. Consider it a promotion. I cried. And when I did, he hugged me. It wasn't weird. It wasn't creepy. It was warm. It was fatherly. Over the next 10 years, Dale became a real father figure to me. He taught me everything I wanted to learn. The one thing that always lingered, though, was his family. He never talked about them much, except to say, I wasn't the best dad, but people change. When I pressed, he'd wave me off. "They're better off without me. You're my second chance." Still, I wanted them to like me. I knew about his estranged daughters, 3 of them, and his son, who apparently wouldn't even return his calls. So I sent them birthday cards from the office every year. When I heard one of them had a baby, I shipped a care package on Dale's behalf. I always hoped if I showed them I wasn't the enemy, they might soften. I even asked Dale once, "Do they know about me?" He gave me a tired smile. "They will, one day, when the time's right." He said he was working on a new will, that he was putting my name on the business. "You've earned it," he told me. "This company wouldn't be what it is without you. You're the daughter I got right." 2 weeks later, Dale collapsed in his kitchen from a massive stroke. He never regained consciousness. When the news hit the office, I didn't cry. I couldn't cry. I handled everything. I organized the files, managed the PR statement, fielded calls from worried clients. I even arranged the memorial service, because no one else did. His family didn't even show up until the day of the funeral. When I saw them, I froze. I recognized them from the photos on his desk, the ones he kept tucked away in the back corner. I approached them slowly, like an overeager kid meeting the cool older siblings. "Hi," I said. I was Dale's assistant, his COO, technically. I helped. "You helped yourself." His oldest daughter snapped. "We know who you are." I flinched. I just wanted to pay my respects. I loved him. "You worked for him," she said, voice cold. "Let's not pretend it was more than that." Another sister chimed in. "He abandoned us. Do you know what that's like?" I wanted to say yes. I wanted to scream that I do, but they didn't care. "I sent you gifts," I whispered. "Cards. I tried. We didn't ask for them." The son stepped forward. "You're not family. You're the reason we never got a second chance, because he gave it to you." I left the church and collapsed in Dale's car, the one he gave me, the one with the cracked leather seat and the pine tree air freshener still dangling. I sobbed like I hadn't since I was a child. 2 weeks after the funeral, the board held a meeting. They told me Dale had never finalized the paperwork, that the company, his shares, his authority, belonged to the family now, and the family had decided to let me go. No hard feelings. I cleared my desk in silence, took the photo of me and Dale at our first conference, walked out of that building and never looked back. I thought I'd shatter. I thought losing him, them, the company, everything would break me, but it didn't, because I had something no one could take, his belief in me, and all the knowledge he gave me. 3 months later, I launched my own logistics firm. I poached 2 of Dale's top clients, both of whom said they only ever stayed because of me. I hired a team of underdogs, single moms, first-gen college grads, wrongfully convicted felons, people no one else would give a shot to, people like me. One of them, a 22-year-old coder named Joy, reminded me so much of myself it hurt. One day she stayed late to triple-check a report and apologized for being annoying. I looked her dead in the eyes and said, "No one who cares this much is ever annoying. You're going to run this place someday." Last week, I got an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a copy of Dale's first draft will, unsigned, but real. It had my name listed under successor. They took the company. They erased me from the story, but I built a new one from scratch, with everything he gave me, and I'm not done yet. I can't tell you what I did to his family here. The full story is on my channel and linked below. My company, Phoenix Logistics, rising from the ashes and all that, was growing faster than I expected. We'd moved from my apartment to a small office space with actual desks and everything. We weren't exactly competition for Dale's company yet, but we were making waves in the local market. Then I got a call from Barbara, Dale's former executive assistant. She wanted to meet for coffee. I hadn't spoken to her since I was fired, so this was weird. We met at this little cafe downtown, the kind with mismatched furniture and baristas with too many piercings. Barbara looked older, tired. She fidgeted with her coffee cup, turning it around and around on the table. She told me Dale's family was running the company into the ground. They fired most of the senior management team and replaced them with friends and relatives. They were bleeding clients. The workplace culture had turned toxic. People were jumping ship left and right. I nodded along, trying not to look too pleased. I know that sounds petty, but come on. It was a little satisfying to hear they couldn't handle what Dale and I had built together. Barbara slid a flash drive across the table. "Dale kept records," she said quietly, "of everything. I thought you should have these." I took the drive home and plugged it in. Holy crap. There were folders upon folders of documents, financial records, emails, meeting notes, and a video file. I clicked on it, and there was Dale, sitting at his desk, recording himself. It was dated just a week before his stroke. He looked tired but determined. He talked about his regrets with his family, how he'd been a workaholic when his kids were young, how his first marriage fell apart because he was never home, how he tried to reconnect with his children as adults but they only wanted his money, not a relationship. He talked about me, how proud he was of what I'd accomplished, how he saw himself in me, but the better parts. Then he dropped the BIM. He said he was changing his will to leave me controlling interest in the company because his children had never shown any interest in learning the business. He said he told them about his plans, and they hadn't taken it well. The video ended with him saying he was going to finalize everything with his lawyer the following week, but he never made it to that meeting. The stroke happened first. I sat there in shock, staring at my dark computer screen. This changed everything. Or did it? The will was never signed. The video wasn't a legal document. It was just Dale talking to a camera. I had no claim to anything. I decided to keep digging through the files. There were emails between Dale and his kids, tense exchanges about money, about the business, about his new favorite daughter. Their words, not his. The most recent ones were ugly. His oldest daughter, Melissa, had threatened to contest any will that left me the company. His son, Ryan, had called me some names I don't want to repeat. The youngest daughter, Caitlin, seemed the least hostile, but she still clearly resented me. I closed my laptop and poured myself a glass of wine. A big one. I didn't know what to do with this information. Part of me wanted to forget it all and focus on my new company. Another part wanted justice for Dale, for his real wishes to be honored. The next morning, I got a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk about Dale." I almost dropped my phone. I texted back asking who it was. The reply came immediately. Caitlin Mercer, Dale's daughter. We agreed to meet at a restaurant near my office. I got there early and picked a table in the corner where we could talk privately. When Caitlin walked in, I recognized her immediately from the photos. She had Dale's eyes, that same piercing blue. She was younger than me by a few years, dressed in expensive clothes that somehow still looked casual. She sat down without ordering anything. She didn't waste time with small talk. She told me her siblings were destroying their father's legacy, that she found out they'd known about Dale's plans to change his will and had been actively preventing him from meeting with his lawyer, that they'd gone through his home office after his death and removed documents documents. I asked her why she was telling me this. She looked down at her hands. I wasn't close with my dad, she said. None of us were, but I respected him, and I respected what he built. My brother and sisters just see dollar signs. She slid a business card across the table. It belonged to Dale's personal lawyer, not the company's legal team. She suggested I talk to him. Then she left, just like that. Didn't even stay for a drink. I called the lawyer, Thomas Green, and made an appointment. His office was in one of those old buildings downtown with brass fixtures and wood paneling. He was older than Dale, with thick glasses and a bow tie. He looked like he belonged in a different century. Thomas confirmed what Caitlin had told me. Dale had been planning to change his will. He discussed it with Thomas multiple times. They drafted the document, the same one someone had anonymously mailed to me, but Dale had canceled their final appointment twice. The second cancellation came the day before his stroke. Thomas couldn't prove that Dale's children had interfered, but he had his suspicions. He also told me something interesting. Dale had created a trust years ago, separate from his will, that held a significant portion of his personal wealth. The trust had specific conditions for its distribution, and Thomas was the trustee. I asked if Dale's children knew about the trust. Thomas adjusted his glasses and gave me a small smile. They are aware of its existence, but not its contents, he said. Dale was quite strategic in his planning. I left Thomas's office with more questions than answers. What was in the trust? Why had Dale kept it secret? And what did it have to do with me, if anything? The next day, I got a call from one of my employees. Someone had broken into our office overnight. Nothing was stolen, but all our computers had been tampered with. The hard drives were gone. Our paper files were scattered everywhere. It looked like someone had been searching for something specific. I called the police, but they weren't much help. Just took a report and told me to improve my security. I was shaken. This wasn't a random break-in. This was targeted. Someone knew about the files Barbara had given me. I went home and checked my apartment for signs of entry. Everything looked normal, but I couldn't shake the feeling I was being watched. I moved the flash drive from my desk to a more secure location. Inside a hollowed-out book my mom had given me years ago. Super spy stuff, I know, but I was freaked out. That night, my phone rang around midnight. It was Barbara. She was crying, barely coherent. She'd been fired. Security had escorted her out of the building that afternoon. They'd accused her of stealing company information. She was worried about her pension, her health insurance. She'd worked for Dale for 20 years. I tried to calm her down, told her I'd help her find a new job, maybe even at my company. She thanked me but said she needed to lay low for a while. Before she hung up, she warned me to be careful. They're looking for something, she said, and they think you have it. The next morning, I got an email from Melissa Mercer. The subject line was simply, meeting. The body was just as brief. We should discuss the future of our respective businesses. Lunch tomorrow, 1 p.m., the Capitol Grill. No please, no thank you. Just a command. Like I was still an assistant who could be ordered around. I thought about ignoring it, but curiosity got the better of me. I replied with a simple, I'll be there. The Capitol Grill is one of those super fancy steakhouses where businessmen spend hundreds on lunch and call it a write-off. I felt out of place the minute I walked in. I was wearing my nicest outfit, but I still felt underdressed compared to the power suits around me. Melissa was already there, sitting at a corner table with a glass of white wine. She didn't stand when I approached. She just gestured to the chair across from her like she was granting me an audience. Ryan was there too, scrolling through his phone, not even bothering to look up when I sat down. Thank you for coming, Melissa said, her voice all business. We'll get right to it. We know you have information that belongs to our company. Documents, files, possibly contracts. We want them returned. I took a sip of water, trying to look calmer than I felt. I don't know what you're talking about. Ryan finally looked up from his phone. Cut the crap. Barbara told us she gave you company property before we fired her. I kept my face neutral. Now I understood how they knew about the files. They'd pressured Barbara into admitting she'd shared information with me before firing her. Barbara and I are friends. We've had coffee. That's it. Melissa leaned forward. Look, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. Return all company documents in your possession. Sign an NDA and a non-compete agreement, and we'll leave you and your little startup alone. Refuse, and we'll bury you in lawsuits until there's nothing left. I felt my temper rising. Is that why you broke into my office? Looking for these imaginary documents? They exchanged a quick glance. So they were behind the break-in. Ryan started to say something, but Melissa cut him off with a sharp look. We had nothing to do with any break-in, she said smoothly. But if someone did access your office, perhaps they were simply recovering stolen property. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. I have nothing that belongs to you, and I'm not signing anything. Dale taught me better than to cave to empty threats. Ryan's face darkened. Dale taught you? He wasn't your father. He was our father. And he was a selfish bastard who abandoned his real family for his precious company. And for what? So he could play daddy to some orphan with daddy issues? That stung, but I didn't let it show. I'm not an orphan. My mother raised me just fine. And Dale was twice the father to me that he apparently was to you. I walked out before they could respond. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely get my car door open. I sat in the parking lot for a few minutes, trying to calm down. What the hell was going on? What did they think I had? When I got back to my office, Joy was waiting for me with a worried expression. There's someone here to see you, she said quietly. She wouldn't give her name, but she says it's urgent. I walked into my office and found Caitlin sitting in my chair. She looked up when I entered, her face tense. They know I talked to you, she said without preamble. Ryan followed me that day. They're furious. I closed the door. What exactly is going on, Caitlin? Why are your siblings so desperate to get whatever they think I have? She bit her lip. It's the trust. Dad set up this trust years ago with conditions about who could access it. They think he changed the terms before he died. They think you're a beneficiary now. That was news to me. And what do they think I have? Documents about the trust? They think you have proof that Dad was planning to cut them out completely. Give you everything. The company, the trust, all of it. I shook my head. That's not what he wanted. He just wanted me to run the company because I actually knew how. The video he recorded made that clear. Caitlin's eyes widened. What video? I hesitated, then decided to trust her. I pulled out my laptop and played the video Barbara had given me. Caitlin watched in silence, tears forming in her eyes as Dale spoke about his regrets as a father. When it ended, she wiped her eyes. They can't see this, she said firmly. If they know this exists, they'll stop at nothing to destroy it. And you. Why? It just shows Dale wanted what was best for the company. You don't understand. The trust has a moral character clause. If the beneficiaries are found to be acting against Dale's wishes or best interests, they can be removed. This video is proof they're doing exactly that. Now things were starting to make sense. The break-in, the threats, all of it. They weren't just worried about the company, they were worried about losing access to the trust, which, based on how desperately they were acting, must be worth a lot more than I'd imagined. Caitlin stood up. I need to go before they realize I'm here. Be careful. My siblings aren't good people. They never were, even when Dad was alive. It's why he distanced himself. After she left, I called Thomas Green again. I needed to understand exactly what was in this trust and what my options were. He agreed to meet me the next morning. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Dale, about the family he'd tried and failed to connect with, about the second chance he'd found with me. I wondered if I was doing the right thing by pursuing this. Maybe I should just focus on my own company and let the past go. But then I remembered what Dale always said. Stand your ground when you know you're right. He'd fought for what he believed in. I needed to do the same. The next morning, I drove to Thomas's office, the flash drive secure in my pocket. I was going to show him the video, get his legal opinion on what it meant for the trust. I never made it inside the building. As I was walking from the parking garage, a black SUV pulled up beside me. The window rolled down, and there was Ryan, looking smug. Get in, he said. We need to talk. I kept walking. I have nothing to say to you. He called after me. That's fine. We can always talk to Joy instead. Or maybe that single mom who does your accounting. Lisa, right? With the cute kids? I stopped cold. Was he threatening my employees? I turned around slowly. Leave them out of this. this. He smiled, and it reminded me so much of my biological father that I felt suck. Then get in the car. Against my better judgment, I got in. Ryan didn't drive away. We just sat there in the parking garage, engine running. He turned to face me. Here's the deal. You give us everything you have from Dad. All the files, all the videos, everything. You sign a non-disclosure agreement. You close your company and move out of state. In return, we leave you and your employees alone. I laughed. I couldn't help it. That's your offer? I give up everything and get nothing in return except not being harassed by you? No thanks. His face hardened. You don't have a choice. We own Dad's company. We have resources you can't imagine. We can crush your little startup overnight. Then why haven't you? I challenged. If you're so powerful, why are you so scared of me? That hit a nerve. Ryan's face flushed red. We're not scared of you. We just want what's ours. No, you want what's Dale's. There's a difference. I reached for the door handle, but Ryan grabbed my arm. His grip was tight enough to hurt. You're not walking away from this. Not until we have a deal. I yanked my arm free. Touch me again, and I'll have you arsted for a Zolt. We're done here. I got out of the car and walked quickly toward Thomas's building, my heart pounding. I heard the SUV's tires squeal as Ryan drove off. I looked back over my shoulder, half expecting him to try to run me down, but he was gone. Thomas was waiting for me in his office, looking concerned. Are you all right? He looked shaken. I told him what had happened with Ryan. Thomas listened gravely, then picked up his phone and made a call. He spoke briefly to someone, then hung up. I've asked security to keep an eye out for Mr. Mercer, he said. Now, you mentioned on the phone that you have some new information. I showed him the video. Thomas watched it carefully, taking notes. When it finished, he sat back in his chair, fingers steepled under his chin. This is significant, he said. Very significant indeed. He explained that Dale's trust was set up with specific provisions. The primary beneficiaries were his children, but there were conditions. They had to demonstrate good character and responsible management of his assets. If they failed to meet these conditions, alternative beneficiaries would receive the trust assets instead. Am I one of those alternatives? I asked. Thomas hesitated. I cannot disclose the specific terms without a court order. However, I can tell you that Dale was very concerned about his legacy, both personal and professional. He wanted his assets to benefit those who shared his values and vision. That wasn't a direct answer, but it told me enough. I was at least mentioned in the trust, which explained why Dale's children were so desperate to get rid of me. What should I do? I asked. Thomas thought for a moment. Document everything, every threat, every encounter. Back up that video in multiple secure locations, and be prepared for them to escalate. People who feel entitled to wealth they didn't earn can become quite irrational when that entitlement is threatened. I left Thomas's office feeling both more informed and more worried. I had evidence that could potentially affect the trust, but using it would mean all-out war with Dale's children, and they had already shown they were willing to play dirty. When I got back to my office, I found the place in chaos. We'd received a cease and desist letter from Dale's company, claiming we were using proprietary information and infringing on their intellectual property. It was complete nonsense, but it had spooked some of our clients. Two had already called to put their contracts on hold until the legal issues were resolved. Joy was trying to calm everyone down, but I could see the worry in her eyes. This was her first real job out of college, and now it looked like it might disappear. I gathered everyone in our small conference room. Listen up, I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. This is a scare tactic, nothing more. We haven't done anything wrong. We built this company from scratch, with our own ideas and our own hard work. I'm going to fight this, and we're going to win. My little speech seemed to help, but I could tell everyone was still worried. After they went back to work, I sat in my office staring at the cease and desist letter. This was just the beginning. Dale's children were going to try to destroy everything I'd built. I needed to fight back. But how? I stared at that cease and desist letter for about an hour before I had an idea. Dale always said the best defense is a good offense. So I called Thomas again and asked if we could meet one more time. He agreed, but suggested we meet somewhere other than his office. We ended up at this little diner on the outskirts of town, the kind of place with sticky menus and waitresses who call you Han. I laid out my plan to him. It was risky, but it might work. Thomas listened carefully, occasionally making notes on a napkin. When I finished, he looked at me over his glasses. It's aggressive, he said. Dale would approve. That was all I needed to hear. I spent the next few days gathering everything I had, the video, the emails, the draft will, all of it. I made copies and stored them in different places. I even mailed one set to my mom with instructions not to open it unless something happened to me. Paranoid? Maybe. But Ryan's threats had me spooked. Meanwhile, our company was struggling. 3 more clients had put their contracts on hold. One of my employees, Mark, had quit after receiving a job offer from Dale's company with double his salary. I couldn't blame him. He had kids to feed, but it still hurt. I called Caitlin and asked to meet again. This time we met at a park, sitting on a bench watching ducks in a pond. Very spy movie, I know. I told her my plan. She was quiet for a long time after I finished. They'll hatch you even more, she finally said. They already had me, I replied. At least this way Dale's legacy has a chance. She nodded slowly. I'll help, but be careful. Ryan especially. He has a temper. I knew all about men with tempers. I'd grown up with one. I wasn't afraid anymore. The next day, I sent an email to Melissa, Ryan, and their other sister Jennifer, who I'd never actually met. I requested a meeting to resolve our differences amicably. I suggested the conference room at Thomas's law firm as neutral ground. Melissa replied within minutes. Fine, tomorrow. Kali money. I spent that night rehearsing what I would say, trying to anticipate their reactions. I barely slept. By the time I arrived at Thomas's office the next morning, I was running on coffee and adrenaline. They were already there when I walked in. Melissa, Ryan, and Jennifer. Thomas sat at the head of the table, looking formal in a full suit. Caitlin was there too, sitting slightly apart from her siblings. They all looked up when I entered. Ryan's face was already red with anger. Let's get this over with, Melissa said as I sat down. What do you want? I took a deep breath. I want to make a deal. Ryan snorted. We already tried that. You weren't interested. I'm interested in a fair deal, I clarified, not blackmail. I opened my laptop and turned it so they could all see the screen. I played a short clip from Dale's video, just enough for them to understand what it was. Ryan's face went from red to white. Melissa's expression didn't change, but I saw her hands tighten into fists. Where did you get that? Jennifer asked. She looked the most like Dale. Same eyes, same way of tilting her head when she was thinking. Dale recorded it the week before his stroke, I said. He knew what you were doing. He knew you were trying to prevent him from changing his will. That's a lie, Ryan snapped. He had a stroke. It was unexpected. No one could have prevented it. I'm not saying you caused his stroke, I clarified. I'm saying you knew he was planning to change his will, and you were actively interfering with that process. Thomas cleared his throat. I can confirm that Dale canceled 2 appointments with me in the weeks before his death, appointments that were specifically scheduled to finalize changes to his will. Melissa's eyes narrowed. And what exactly are you suggesting? I laid it all out. The evidence I had that they'd known about Dale's plans, the trust conditions that could potentially remove them as beneficiaries if they were found to be acting against Dale's wishes, the fact that they were now running his company into the ground. Here's my offer, I said when I'd finished. I won't contest the will. The company stays with you. I won't pursue any claim to the trust. In exchange, you drop all legal actions against my company. You stop harassing my employees, you stop threatening me, and you put Caitlin in charge of Dale's company. That last part got their attention. All 3 siblings looked at Caitlin in surprise. She met their gaze steadily. Caitlin? Jennifer asked. What do you know about this? Enough, Caitlin replied. Enough to know that Dad would be ashamed of what you're doing. Ryan laughed, an ugly sound. This is ridiculous. We're not putting Caitlin in charge of anything, and we're certainly not backing off just because you have some video of Dad rambling before he died. I closed my laptop. Then I'll release the video. I'll contest the will. I'll provide evidence to Thomas that you're violating the terms of the trust. And I'll sue you for harassment, defamation, and interference with my business. With what money? Melissa asked coldly. We'll bankrupt you before any of those cases see a courtroom. That's when Thomas spoke up. Actually, Ms. Mercer, there's something you should know. The trust has a provision for legal expenses in exactly this situation. If there's a dispute over the terms or a challenge to the administration, the trust itself pays the legal fees of all parties. I hadn't known that. Based on the looks on their faces, neither had Dale's children. That changed the calculation significantly. They couldn't just outspend me anymore. This is blackmail, Ryan said, but his voice lacked conviction. No, I replied. This is negotiation. Something Dale taught me. Jennifer, who had been quiet most of the meeting, finally spoke up. Why Caitlin? Why not you? If you believe Dad wanted you to run the company, why give it to her? It was a good question. Because I have my own company now. And because Caitlin is Dale's daughter. She deserves a chance to be part of his legacy. She's the only one of you who seems to actually care about what he built. Melissa and Ryan started arguing, talking over each other about how this was all a setup, how they wouldn't be bullied. Jennifer just watched me, her expression thoughtful. After a few minutes of this, she held up her hand, and surprisingly, her siblings fell silent. I want to see the whole video, she said. I hesitated, then nodded. I played the entire recording. We all sat in silence as Dale's voice filled the room, talking about his regrets, his hopes, his plans for the future. When it ended, Jennifer had tears in her eyes. Even Melissa looked shaken. Ryan just looked angry, but that seemed to be his default state. He never told us any of this, Jennifer said quietly. About feeling like he failed as a father, about wanting to make amends. He tried, Caitlin said. You guys just didn't want to hear it. There was another long silence. Then Jennifer turned to Thomas. If we agree to this arrangement, what happens to the trust? Thomas adjusted his glasses. The trust remains as it is, with the current beneficiaries, unless there's evidence of continued violation of its terms. Jennifer nodded slowly. I need to discuss this with my siblings. Privately. Thomas showed them to another room. When they were gone, I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Caitlin gave me a small smile. That went better than I expected, she said. No one stormed out or threw anything. Yet, I added. The day's still young. We waited for almost an hour. I kept checking my phone, answering urgent emails from my team. Our biggest client was threatening to leave if the legal issues weren't resolved by the end of the week. I was running out of time. Finally, the door opened and Dale's children filed back in. They sat down across from us, their faces unreadable. We have a counteroffer, Melissa said. Caitlin can take over as CEO of Dad's company. We'll drop all legal actions against your company. We'll sign agreements not to interfere with your business in any way. I waited for the catch. There's always a catch. In exchange, she continued, you turn over all copies of that video and any other recordings or documents you have from Dad. You sign an NDA about everything you've learned about our family and the trust. And you agree never to contest the will or make any claim on Dad's estate. It was actually pretty reasonable, better than I'd expected. I looked at Thomas, who gave a small nod. I accept, I said, with one addition. I want a formal apology to my employees for the disruption to their lives and careers. Ryan started to object, but Jennifer cut him off. That's fair. We'll issue a statement. We spent the next hour working out the details with Thomas. By the end, we had a framework for an agreement. It wasn't perfect, but it was something I could live with. Something that honored what Dale would have wanted. As we were wrapping up, Jennifer approached me. Can I talk to you for a minute? Alone? We stepped into the hallway. Jennifer looked uncomfortable, shifting her weight from foot to foot. I wanted to say I'm sorry, she said finally. For what happened at the funeral, for what Ryan said to you in the car, for all of it. I wasn't expecting that. Thank you. Dad talked about you sometimes, she continued. Not often, but when he did, he was proud. Really proud. I was jealous, I think, that he could start fresh with you when he'd messed up so badly with us. I didn't know what to say to that. I'd spent so long seeing Dale's children as the enemy that I'd never really thought about how they might see me. He loved you guys, I said. He just didn't know how to show it. And by the time he figured it out, there was too much history in the way. Jennifer nodded. Maybe. Anyway, I just wanted you to know that not all of us hurt you. And I think Dad made the right choice, trusting you. She walked back into the conference room, leaving me standing there processing what had just happened. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, but it was something. A crack in the wall between us. The formal agreement was signed a week later. True to their word, Dale's children dropped all legal actions against my company. Caitlin took over as CEO of Dale's company. Our clients came back, relieved that the legal cloud had lifted. It wasn't a perfect ending. Ryan still glared at me whenever we crossed paths at industry events. Melissa was coldly professional, but never friendly. But Jennifer and I developed a cautious respect for each other. We even had coffee occasionally, talking about Dale and the lessons he'd taught us both. As for my company, we thrived. Without the threat of legal action hanging over us, we were able to focus on growth. We moved to a bigger office, hired more people, expanded into new markets. Joy did eventually run the place, just like I predicted. She became my COO 3 years later, bringing fresh ideas and energy that took us to the next level. I still have Dale's car. The leather seats are more cracked now, and the pine tree air freshener lost its scent years ago, but I can't bring myself to replace it. Sometimes when I'm driving alone, I talk to him, tell him about my day, my challenges, my victories. I know he's not really there, but it helps. Last month, I got an invitation to the dedication of the Dale Mercer Memorial Scholarship. Caitlin had set it up to help kids from disadvantaged backgrounds get business degrees. She asked me to speak at the ceremony. I stood at that podium looking out at a crowd that included Jennifer, a few of Dale's old colleagues, and even Melissa. I talked about second chances, about seeing potential in people who don't see it in themselves, about building something that lasts. After the ceremony, Caitlin hugged me. He'd be proud of both of us, she said. I think she's right. Dale wasn't perfect. He made mistakes with his first family that he couldn't fully repair, but he got it right the second time around, with me. And in the end, that's what matters. Not the company or the money or the legal battles, just the fact that he saw something in me worth believing in. And because he did, I learned to see it too.